Hi, I'm Jess Smith with the Golden State Valkyries.
And I'm Claire Nelson, Managing Director of the Netball Super League, and we have just come off the stage for Leadership Hour, where we talked about building and launching brand new sports clubs in a new era. Jess, you've got a job on your hands.
You too, but we hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Hello, we liked that hype music walking out, didn't we?
Yeah, it was good. We had some thoughts and suggestions on what our walkout should be, but that works.
We'll put the notes in. Thank you for joining us, everybody, to the first session of Leadership Hour. My name is Claire Nelson, and I'm the Managing Director of the Netball Super League, and I am buzzed to be joined here by the incredible Jess Smith, who's the first ever president of the Golden State Valkyries. So yesterday, we heard quite a bit about women's sport is having a moment, that it's a movement. And I think it's fair to say that two of the women who are leading that movement and are in the moment are on this stage right now. And as we both prepare to launch new products in the women's sports market next year, I think we've got a lot to talk about today. Yeah. So, Jess, you are 9 months, just short of 9 months in role?
Yes, although it's like dog years, so it feels like many years at this point when you're building a startup.
That's where I was going to start. I was just going to say, how are you doing? Like, how have those first 8-9 months been? How are you?
Wow, what a loaded question. One, I need to remember to drink more water. But no, I'm doing great. You know, I think the experience with Angel City and now having the opportunity to build the Valkyries again, we talked about this a little bit, but you're motivated by so much more every day and what this means. And so when you're hiring your people, when you're building your fan base, when you're building community, there's nothing more motivating than waking up every day. And you have a real date to work against. There's no shifting the product launch 6 months. We will be opening next May. And so it's a truly limited timeline that you have to be motivated against and really strategic about when and how you do everything, because there is only so much bandwidth and time to get that done.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about that, but I'm keen to know a bit more, first of all, this is Leadership Hour, about how you got here, because not only do you have this really cool job, but you come from Angel City. You were part of Inception, you were head of revenue there. I believe Angel City is the most profitable women's football club in the world. Yep. Tell us a little bit about your career journey to date and what made you take this role and jump from Angel City.
Yeah, my career has been filled with saying yes to opportunities and growth, making myself uncomfortable, wanting to learn, wanting to acquire new skills and perspectives. And I'm at the point in my career where I'm able to take those perspectives and then build with them. So I started off working in men's sports. I worked within Major League Baseball with the Oakland Athletics, National Hockey League with the Columbus Blue Jackets, much different markets. Then shifted into the football world, being with the San Jose Earthquakes in the Bay Area before jumping into Angel City. And when I did the project with Angel City, so many people were like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, is that league gonna thrive? You're using your experience. But I think much like you're seeing in the consumers in women's sports and in overall too, you're asking yourself a lot of questions. I've acquired these skills, but what am I doing every day, right? Like, how am I using what I know in this world to make it a better place and enjoy doing what I like doing? And so I knew that there was an opportunity there with that ownership group and the incredible folks coming together. And building that from day one was an incredible experience, you know, because there was so much disbelief in what we were doing. And now being able to use that momentum to build within the WNBA has been astounding.
And the shift change is insane, because now Angel City, it's so exciting. Julie Ehrman has sat on this stage, talked about building a global brand. It's really interesting to hear that when you started, people were questioning what you're doing. Is it different now with Valkyries that you're not having to do that sell? It's an absolute, this is an opportunity. How do we support you? How do we make that happen?
It is different now. And I think one thing to reflect back on my career too is when you work in all these different men's sports leagues, I think it's assumed that potentially it's the same playbook, but it's not. Each of these leagues has different consumers, different strategies, different ways they monetize, how they shift, you know, in and out of things to maximize that. And taking that perspective and bringing it into women's sports and building around the unique product that it is versus just trying to build it like other men's teams, I think is what has made it really powerful. It's not just like football that women are playing or basketball that women are playing. Like, it is its own product through sport that is really important. And I would say to your question, at Angel City, often, specifically when you're talking on the branding side, there were a lot of questions of like, how do we do this? How do we do it well? Where do we jump into this to make sure that the brand values are upheld to how we want women's sports to look and feel? And Angel City had a product that allowed brands to feel comfortable in doing that in a really powerful way. These days, probably so many in this room too, a lot of brands have specific strategies around women's sports, understanding it is a unique audience. Mm-hmm. And so not only are you looking at it from that perspective, but you're thinking of the different ways into how to engage that. Mm-hmm. And those conversations weren't as in an abundance as they are in these last couple of years.
And we're really going to get into that because already you've not even had your first tip-off yet and you're already breaking records in that. But so you did a startup, which you were telling me Angel City was created in lockdown. So really challenging circumstances, and any new product that is built and launched is a huge amount of work. When you came into this new role, then what learnings did you take from that experience that enabled you to hit the ground running quicker, do things maybe differently, better? What were those critical things that you took from that you deployed in this new role?
Yeah, the efficiencies and the tenacity to build something different, to question everything, and to not take no for an answer every step of the way. And we did that at Angel City and saw what the payoff was. So staying the course and knowing at your core what the product is that you're building is a huge learning for me. But most importantly, I would say as a leader, the confidence that actually the stress of what we're doing this year will end up being my favorite memory of it all. When I look back at Angel City, to your point, there were 5 of us with a laptop inside of our homes during the pandemic building this, giving the partnership pitches, talking to the media, figuring out our brand. Like, we had such issues like trying to make sure we got the color right over the computer screen because we couldn't see it in real person. And when you look back at those moments, that's really when the magic of a brand happens. Those really tough moments, just like in their personal life, like that's when growth happens. Yeah. And so instilling that confidence in the team that I've assembled at the Valkyries, to be like, I know it feels overwhelming, but this is it. And like, you're really gonna remember what this feels like, and that you were the one that did this is huge. And
your team's going to look to you to do that. We've just been through something similar with Netball Super League relaunching next year, and it's been a really tough, painful few months. We've exited clubs to bring new ones in, and there's a lot of people that hurt with that, but you have to look at them and go, this is us in the heart of building something. The scale of opportunity and work to be done is relative to the scale of challenge that sits around us, but it's this point that you either plow through and believe and are really mission focused, or it breaks you. And I think that if you've been through that before, that's really going to help you to lead your team through that. And interestingly, you have an all-female executive team as well. Tell me about the decision-making around the people around you, and how in particular you wanted to build that female executive workforce.
I mean, for us, we always want the best candidates in the best position to help us succeed. And specifically when you're a startup, those executive hires are so important, right? Because we are all doing more than what you would think we're doing on paper. And so really it's about finding the right people that get what we're building and that feel emotionally connected to what we're building, because each one of them is the stakeholder into that different line, right? My head of partnerships is the one talking to the CEOs and CMOs about the brand and what a partnership's going to feel like. My senior vice president of communications is the one talking to the media. Like, she has to feel like overwhelmingly compelled in the strength of what we're building and so forth. And so the intention was really just to find the best people. I think one of the things that I learned at Angel City is in those early days, it felt like we assembled an all-star team of human beings. Everyone was really great at their crafts, and we let the people that were the experts be the experts in their field, and then we supported one another. And to replicate that from an executive level, find the people that have done it before, but find the people that are also just like a good person to work with, because you are going to work a lot and it's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And how you navigate that as a team and a culture are ultimately what defines your overall success. But we've been fortunate to have that team. And then on our sporting side, we have a wonderful general manager in Ohema. She joins us most recently from the New York Liberty, where she spent the last 5 years. And then we did just hire our head coach as well, Natalie Nakase, who joins us from the Las Vegas Aces, who's an absolute powerhouse, had her press conference last Thursday. And having those two lead from their perspectives in actually building out our athlete side of our business is something that's going to be very valuable for us.
I love how you talk about your highs. You describe everybody as a great human being first and foremost. And I think this is the thing, is when you are building something from scratch, you need to make sure that you've got brilliant people, because there's no fat there. You've just got to hit the ground running, be totally effective. But it's going to get hard. So you need to make sure that you've got people that you can be in those hard times together, and actually having that kind of support network of people who are truly invested beyond kind of what they're being paid to do, I believe is how you get these, new entities up and running. In terms of your kind of, you are part of Warriors. How much do you get to say what this new product looks like? Because you're talking about your team and your people and hires. These are big moments that you're leading. When you started this, were you given, here's a plan we want you to deliver, or did you come in and go, this is what I want to do and how I'm going to do it?
I love that question. I had a lot of fear about thinking about being under a shared service umbrella. And having built Angel City independently, seeing the resources we put against it, seeing the focus that we had, even though we were a smaller team, and the outcome to that, and knowing, and watching the world often when there's a men and women's team under the same umbrella, same branding, a little bit of added staff, but not necessarily your own sales pitch to what it is, et cetera. I didn't want to be part of something like that, to be quite honest. I look back at the confidence I had in my meeting with Joe Lacob and Peter Guber, which is to sit down at the table and question them, what are your intentions with the expansion rights? And I think what hit me there, you talked a lot about how I talk about being a good person. When you look at that organization, that ownership group, that's how they function. They are relentless in being great, but so many of the people on their staff have been there 10, 20 plus years. They have grown the organization from that ownership group. They have opened Chase Center, and they're curious. They're like, we've done this, but we haven't done what you were a part of in women's sports. And Joe Lacob specifically was an investor in women's sports even before the WNBA. There was a women's basketball league, the ABL, in which he owned a team and ended up folding. So he's been a believer in the product for decades. And so that confidence of how should we do this, that question was huge for me. And so what that's looked like is we had some really healthy debates on brand, how we came to market, who we are. We're really big believers in what Golden State means and defining that, but we actually feel like we can lead in a really special way, much like you saw in the NBA All-Star with Steph and Sabrina, right, where we have two powerful entities, and yet when we come together, there's something magical about that. So the questions we ask ourselves from that are, how do we think about the interchangeability to jerseys to young boys and young girls? So it's not just Valkyries are young girls and Warriors are young boys, but they idolize all genders. What does that mean? How do we think through the foundation and the branding and making sure that our brand in the Valkyries is equally placed throughout the Bay Area community and beyond, so that the perception of our brand, while we are newer and smaller today, is that we are the same. And those are places we can lead. But the autonomy is there. And we're seeing the results because of the choices that we've made. There were some debates on blue or gold. But when you see blue and gold in Golden State, that is the Warriors. They are a global brand. They've earned every piece of that legacy. We wanted to be something that we could build our own legacy into. And also, the reality is, not all of our fans are going to be Warriors fans, and vice versa. We hope that eventually there's fandom that goes to both sides. But in some of the results we're seeing, we have 18,500 seat deposits that we're working through right now, and less than 5% are actually Warriors season ticket holders. That's the point. And I said that from day one. We're not building a product to lure Warriors fans to come in to be a Valkyries fan. We are building a product that are the Valkyries, reaching a unique audience that we hope Warriors fans will ultimately connect with.
So I really want to talk about that building a fan base, because when I saw, and it's amazing, over 18,000 when I was doing my homework last week, you were 17,000 season ticket holders. And interestingly, when Brady Stewart was on the stage yesterday, Bay FC just launched, so these two new women's sports properties in the same area. She is also reporting record-breaking season ticket sales, also sponsorship sales. First of all, who are your audience? Where are you getting them from? But what is this also telling us about the appetite and scale of potential and possibility for women's sports right now?
There's a huge opportunity. And I think the brands that are getting it right and leading into this audience are seeing that. But even if you look at our society right now, consumers are looking to support brands that they feel compelled to align with, that they think their values match. So sport or not sport, just in general, when you're looking at Gen Z and younger consumers, they are demanding a better world and more responsible product. So like we have to remember that in the intentions of what we're building. You know, we are seeing great success and we are very focused on the business side. And the reason for that is the way to get to pay equity is actually to build great business and make sure that we're growing what the overall league and opportunity is, right? So that eventually the players can get paid more money and it all works out in that fashion. But there is a huge opportunity because there aren't many brands that have yet to come to the forefront to build the product with intentionality. You know, so for us, especially in women's sports, we talked about the unique product that it is. We lean into building something that's powerful and yet also purpose-driven. They can coexist. You know, mission and capital can be the same. They don't have to be separated. And being purpose-driven isn't being charitable. And I think that's a really big piece of what we're defining. So for us, when we think of intentionality, really what we lean on is inclusivity. That's a really big word. People use it often, as they should. But what does it mean to the Valkyries? For us, that means shoulders down, that people can feel safe and celebrated in the environments that we create. But the reality of our society is that's not the case for many, especially some of the communities represented within the WNBA family and athletes. And so through innovation and real impact, driving systemic change through dollars, we're going to promise to make leaps into making it a better tomorrow, whether that's providing access to sport, which we know, over 90% of women in C-level positions have had. We can't deny what that means in our society. Or, diverse coaching lines of talent to make sure that we have more women and diversity in those coaching areas. We can do both of those things. So each partnership that we have in our founding level and above will fund initiatives that make real change, and then also create a really fun game day experience as well.
And how do you balance all of those? Because we know what fans want to be part of. We want to drive impact. We know we want to be socially responsible citizens. That's what engages with fans and brands. You've also got to make sure you sell Chase Center and you've got bums on street.
Yep.
For me, they should all be integrated and should work as part of the business system. How have you approached this to prioritize? Because I guess what Brady was talking about yesterday is that we wanted to go hard and fast and be the best and get everything done to get on the pitch. For you, there's so much potential. Where do you start, and how do you make all of those elements work that enables those commercial drivers?
Well, I'll go back to, you asked a little bit about audience, so I'll get specific there. And so we have 3 segments of prospective demographics that are now our demographics. But even before you start, you have to know who you want to talk to and why, right? You can't just blanket everything and think that everyone's just going to find their way to you. You have to be intentional about that, like anything. And so for one, we have the women's sports fan. The person who's been watching women's sports for a long time, it's been difficult to be a fan. They're trying to watch high production, find the game on TV, follow the athletes, get the merchandise that they want to wear that defines their values. And we want to make sure that for them, whether it's basketball or not, that they feel compelled to support the Valkyries. The second for us is the largest opportunity in women's sports and what you're seeing. We call them a bright believer consumer. And that's that 20 to 40-year-old coming into their buying power, but truly aligning with brands that they see values in. They want to be part of communities that they feel like they're making the world a better place, and they are incredibly, incredibly loyal in what they're doing. And then the third for us is what we call a basketball purist. And so oddly, that's the one we're kind of just getting to. They've been watching what we're doing, but now that we have a coach, and now that we're starting to talk about players, that consumer is going to start coming into our ecosystem, and all 3 are important, but all 3 are actually very different. And so we talk about we can't be inclusively exclusive. We need to make sure we're building a product where people, whether they were a fan of women's sports yesterday, doesn't necessarily matter, we need them to come in, and yet we pay tribute to the history of what got us here in the first place and make sure that women's sports fan and that our brand is very genuine to what it's taken and our now opportunity here. And so where we start is knowing who we're talking to, first and foremost, building products, building communications, building community for them separately and together. and then getting to work. In any startup, you need to be very, very focused. If it is not driving revenue or building fan base for us, it is not a priority right now. Our goal is to do both of those things in all things, and then with that core intentionality, how do partners fit into that? How do fans fit into that? Merchandise fit into that, and so forth. And what will that look like at Game Day Experience is now the question.
It's completely tactical. It's what you do when and why that gets you to having the product that you need when you need it. When you started, when you came in, what were your first 3 things, your top 3 priorities that you said, this is what I need to get done, these are my non-negotiables?
Hiring, number 1, right? We talked about it earlier, but you can't do anything alone. So hiring, first and foremost. Second is, before we're asking anybody for anything, we need to know who we are. And so really building out our brand, leaning into, and we talk about inclusivity with innovation and impact, that takes a moment to formulate, and it needs to be something that you can build your entire business around. So that was the second piece. So good people, the heart of who this organization is and our why and everything that we do. And then 3, how we're going to drive revenue, right? That has to be a primary focus. If nobody's there on opening night, everything that you've built, it doesn't matter. If you don't have corporate partners by your side, all of that funnels into the same piece.
And that brand piece, so I love, because we're talking about inclusion and make sure it's inclusive, but you are, Valkyries are female warriors. And we shared an anecdote earlier last week. We launched our new brand, Netball Super League, and one of the first questions that we got asked is, what about the men? And we're trying to build a product that absolutely is a sportainment proposition that everyone wants to turn up and enjoy. But ultimately, we are here unapologetically and proudly to uplift and illuminate the indisputable power of women. That's what we're here to do, and that's our opportunity. How do you take your female brand that represents strength and warriors, and you've called your club after this, and yet make sure that you are inclusive and appealing to all? How do you talk to that, and how does that come through in your marketing activity?
I think, and one thing to clarify is, we talked about the fan demographics. Women's sports demographics right now are 50% men and women. So there's more women showing up, however, the audience is still 50-50. So men are 100% part of the equation, and the youth in totality is as well, making sure young boys and girls feel like they're going to be future fans and brand ambassadors for what we're building. But it's always a double standard, right? I've grown up idolizing male athletes. That's what's been put in front of us from the media, certainly fans of men's teams that are more masculine as they're portrayed, and it's never a question. And then a women's team, right, does the opposite, obviously representing the product that's on the field or court, et cetera, and it's questioned. Well, why, this isn't for me, but why isn't it for you? And so I think it's important to be unapologetic in who we are and actually just be it and make sure that you're making it fun and inviting for folks, but also to not think about that too much, right? There's people that are going to question what you do, and the reality is maybe the product's not for them, and that's okay. If you are more of a traditional sport fan and don't necessarily want to be over here, that's okay. There's an entire audience, by the way, that's not going to men's sports, that's sitting in women's sports, or that doesn't consider themselves a sports fan and yet finds sport through women's sports. Or, most importantly, most fans of women's sports, that's their number one. It's not, oh, yes, I follow global football, and yes, I follow the NFL and MLB and NHL. Those fans cross over quite a bit. Women's sports fans are women's sports fans a lot. And then, of course, there's some casual fandom elsewhere. But again, when you're thinking of the strength of the product, the loyalty of the product, which brands do you think they're going to support? Which merchandise do you think they're going to buy? It's much different.
And I think, for all of us that have been talking about the growth of women's sport and how to commercialize that through female fandom, that's where the power lies, that loyalty, that decision-making that's in there. The Fame Gap report that was put out a couple of weeks ago talked about how female sports fans are resonating with female athletes, and that's your opportunity to access the content, the engagement, the emotional engagement is far greater. And they would rather spend their money on big events, big showcase events. So actually that speculate to accumulate, create the experiences where it's safe, where it's different, that's where women will come. In terms of then, you are starting something brand new, and that's so exciting. How how different do you want to be? When you approach this, because we all go, you have an opportunity to do things different. We all talk about the opportunity to redesign the future. You're also creating something that you want to future-proof because there are evolving habits on how we consume sport. How far ahead do you think about what you're building now, and what do you want to try? What are those things that you want to introduce that you think are going to set you apart?
Yeah, I think it's in a startup, right? You're focused on the basics like we talked about, and then you have to be thinking of your future self. So we're 2-3 years ahead at this moment in time, thinking through what that 3-4 years into the brand feels like. What do the global markets, in 4 months' time since brand launch, we've sold merchandise in 70 countries in all 50 states. Where are we going to go with that? What does that mean? How are we creating community and fandom more intently there? So future is very, very important to us right now, and how we're going to start to lay the steps to get there, but we still have to get the basics right. We have to create the most can't-miss opportunity that people watch around the globe that want them to come visit and be a part of what we're building. And I think the most successful men's teams, and it's going to be no different in women's spaces too, for the Warriors, for instance, like less than 1% of their global fans will ever actually step inside Chase Center. Right? And it's really important to understand you are building 2 product lines at all times. You're building your ticketed event on site that, of course, people that are fans are going to watch and wish they were a part of or want to make the trip to go see. But you're also creating fandom through people that are watching and consuming you in many different ways. Or in women's sports, the Sports Innovation Lab did a great study where they show that merchandise is actually the first way that women's sports fans often engage. They're going to buy your merch because they like it before they do anything else, which is a much different pathway. But again, how are you learning from that? And it's more of a lifestyle conversation and cultural conversation than just the sport itself.
And I take it that that's a very direct strategy, because it's the same with Netball Super League. We're in competition for 4 months of the year, but actually what we want to create is an annualized proposition where people are engaging with our content all year round, and that content drives that intersect between fashion, lifestyle, music, art. We want to stand for things, we want to entertain people. We're not just competition organisation, it's not about putting a team on a court. What is your strategy around elevating your athletes and making sure that you are resonating with your audiences in the ways that we know women and girls are hungry to consume this content?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, the athletes of the WNBA are incredible, and many of them leading the globe in many different capacities. But for us, when we're building a product that creates amazing content, shares our stories, has values, that transcends sports, and it's something that they're a part of. Ohema is no different in myself, in we want really good people, that culture is the most important thing. And she shared often, leading from her side of when she's thinking of athletes, that's no different, right? How it's not a one of one, it's that we win together, we go through difficult times together. And so I do think we're going to be really diligent about what that culture feels like from business and basketball, and every athlete's going to be a key piece of that, because each of them also connects differently. And I think that's what's so beautiful too, is people want to know what they're wearing, how they're wearing it. Some are into wearing makeup, some purposely aren't, but have a great skincare routine, right? Like all of those elements the consumers actually heavily care about. And so outside of the season, there's a huge opportunity for us to work together with these athletes too.
And just for me, that's where the opportunity lies, to build these emotional connections. That's what drives bums on seats. And that's also where you bring brands and consumers in. How can they help to tell these stories? And how can we, position sport as being far more than just those kind of traditional metrics of competition, eyeballs, and visibility. This is about emotional engagement and people coming on a journey. And that the young girls today feel good about themselves because of their relationship with sport. Like, we've got to change the system. Sport is one of the most powerful things that can do that. So, yeah, we want to be commercial. We want to sell these season tickets. We want to win. But it's actually, how do you then leverage that to start to make a shift change in a system where it's needed most?
And not see women as one-dimensional, right? Like, oh, you're an athlete doesn't mean that you don't enjoy dressing up in certain ways either. And I think that's a key piece here, is that you're seeing it all.
That's it. People want to be seen. And I just think when you look at these athletes, that's the best way to be seen. So 9 months in, a lot of work to do. Have you faced any really challenging decisions so far? Anything that you've just had to go out there in front and it's felt really uncomfortable?
You know, I think discomfort happens every step of the way in a startup, but for us, we're really measured and we want to listen. So every time we're getting ready to make major decisions, we are like, we need to think about our fan base and our community before we do this. For instance, the Valkyries name alone, 25% of people, right after the team was announced, the San Francisco Chronicle ran a, write in, what do you think the name should be called? And 25% of people said Valkyries. It wasn't necessarily on the radar from day one, but the fans put it on the radar. And every time we kept coming back to it, they saw beauty in it, they saw strength in it, we should too, and then make it something that's undeniable. And so similarly, as we're thinking through things like how are we pricing our ticketed experience and what are we building, we survey people. What is a fair price to pay for the experience that you're looking for? It's going to cost less if your amenities are less. Do you want great amenities? What does premium feel like versus non-premium? We're not making those decisions in a vacuum, and I think that's really, really important. But those moments are challenging because there is no roadmap to what we're building. Right? There is no, well, what are the benchmarks? What have other people done? How does this feel elsewhere? We're not emulating anybody. We're not emulating the products in that arena because it's a completely different audience. We're not emulating other women's sports teams. We're in a unique market in the Bay Area. And so we are truly building on a little bit of research, but the gut feeling beside our community of what we want this to feel like.
And that's so exciting. It's scary. I always say it's great to be pioneering until you're the person pioneering, and then it's pretty terrifying. But also, what an opportunity for us. Last question. I'm conscious we're in the red in our timing because we could talk all day. So next year, really exciting. Sell your club. What should we get excited about? You know, we know what's going on behind the scenes, but what are Valkyries going to bring to the WNBA next year, and why should we watch them?
It's going to be undeniable. You know, some of what we're building at that's not quite announced, and I can't share here, there's no breaking news, but how we're thinking of what the merchandise feels like, the collaborations that we're going to be doing, how we're thinking about the intention of, it's not just influencers associated with our brand, but folks that want to be associated in a deeper level with us that means something more. I think you're going to see a lot of leadership from us, but it's also just going to be fun. Our environment is going to be loud and chaotic, but also safe, and people are going to want to come join us for that.
Love it. Can't wait. All really excited. Jess, we could have talked all day, but thank you very much for sharing your journey today, and we all wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
For getting to that first tip-off in May next year.
We don't have a date quite yet, but you can expect mid-May.
It'll fly in, and we will all be watching and supporting and wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.